I, 26F, stood on the porch of the house I grew up in, the front door closing with a quiet click behind me. The sound was so gentle, so final. It did not match the storm that had just happened inside. My father's words echoed in my ears. They felt like stones thrown at my face. "You're not welcome here anymore," he had said it with a flat, empty voice. There was no anger left in him.
It was just a statement of fact.
A new rule for the house. I was no longer a part of it. I looked down at the single car key in my hand. My purse was on my shoulder. I had a small duffel bag at my feet with a few clothes I had grabbed in a daze. It was all I had from a life of 26 years lived within those walls. The air was cool, and I could feel a slight tremble in my hands. I was not crying. I was just empty. My father's new wife, Susan, had been standing behind him during our fight. She had a small, satisfied smile on her face. She had won. That was the look. It was a look of victory. She had been working toward this moment for months, ever since she and her daughter, Chloe, had moved in. Little comments here and there. Small complaints about me to my father. She would say things like, "Clara is so particular about the kitchen," or, "I feel like I'm walking on eggshells around her." They were small seeds of discord, and she had planted them carefully. My father, still grieving my mother in his own quiet way, was fertile ground for her words. He wanted peace. He wanted a happy home. Susan had promised him that, but her version of a happy home did not include me. The fight had started over something so stupid. A bill. I had been managing the household finances since my mom passed away 3 years ago. It was my way of helping my dad, of making sure everything stayed stable. My mom had been the one who handled everything, and my dad was lost without her. I stepped in, creating budgets, paying bills from a joint account we all used, and making sure he was saving for retirement. It worked. For a while. Then Susan arrived. The spending started to creep up. Small things at first. New decorations for the living room. Expensive ingredients for dinners I was never invited to. Then it became bigger things. Chloe needed a new laptop for school, a top-of-the-line model. Susan needed a whole new wardrobe because her old one was, in her words, too depressing. This month, a bill came for a landscape designer. It was for thousands of dollars. I saw it on the online banking portal. They wanted to rip out my mother's garden. The garden she had spent decades cultivating. It was her sanctuary. It was full of roses and lavender and herbs that made the whole yard smell like heaven. Susan wanted to replace it with a modern, minimalist design with a concrete patio and a fire pit. When I asked my dad about it, I tried to be calm. I just wanted to understand. "I saw a bill for a landscape designer," I said. "What is that for?" He shifted his weight from one foot to the other. He would not look me in the eye. "Susan thinks the yard could use an update," he said. "Make it more modern." "It's Mom's garden," I said, my voice quiet. She loved that garden. Susan, who had been listening from the kitchen, walked into the room. She wiped her hands on a dish towel. "Honey, it's just a garden," she said to me, but her eyes were on my dad. "We want to make this house our own. We need to create our own memories here." "My memories are already here," I said. The words came out sharper than I intended. The argument escalated from there. I brought up the spending. I told my dad that the account was draining faster than it was being filled. I reminded him of the budget we had agreed on. Susan called me controlling and ungrateful. She said I was living in the house for free and acting like I owned the place. She said I was stuck in the past and holding my father back from happiness. My dad stood there, silent, his face growing harder with every word she spoke. He looked from her to me, a man caught between his past and his future. He chose his future. "She's right, Clara," he finally said. "This is her home now, too. You need to accept that. If you can't, then maybe you shouldn't be here." The air went out of my lungs. I stared at him, waiting for him to take it back. He just stared back, his expression grim. "Are you serious?" I asked. "You're choosing her over me?" "I'm not choosing anyone," he said, his voice rising. "I'm choosing to have a peaceful home. You are constantly creating tension. You question every little thing. I'm tired of it. I'm questioning a $5,000 bill for destroying Mom's garden. I yelled. I'm trying to protect you. I don't need your protection, he snapped. I'm a grown man. Susan and I are building a life together. You are a guest in this house, and you have overstayed your welcome. That was when he said the final words. You're not welcome here anymore. I just nodded. There was nothing else to say. Arguing was pointless. He had made his decision. I turned around, walked up the stairs to my room, and packed my bag. Susan's daughter, Chloe, was in the hallway as I came down. She gave me a smug little smirk and went into her room. She was probably already planning how she would redecorate mine. I walked past the living room, past my father, who was now being comforted by Susan, and out the front door. So there I was, standing on the porch, homeless, betrayed by my own father. I took a deep breath, trying to control the shaking in my hands. I felt a strange sense of calm settle over me. It was the calm that comes after the storm has passed, and you are left to survey the damage. The damage was extensive. My relationship with my father was in ruins. My home was gone. But as I stood there, another feeling began to surface. It was a cold, hard feeling. It was resolve. He thought he could just throw me out. Susan thought she had won. They had made a very big mistake. They had forgotten one very important detail. A detail my mother had put in place years ago to protect me. A detail that was about to turn their happy, new life upside down. I walked to my car, threw my bag in the passenger seat, and got in. I did not look back at the house. I just started the engine and drove away. I did not know where I was going yet, but I knew what I had to do first. I pulled over to the side of the road a few blocks away, where they could not see me. I took out my phone. My hands were steady now. I scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I was looking for. It was the number for the main branch of our family bank. I pressed the call button. A polite voice answered on the other end. I took another deep breath and began to speak. Hello, I said, my voice clear and even. My name is Clara Miller. I need to speak with someone about placing a security freeze on a trust account. An hour later, my father's phone would ring. It would be the bank. And he would finally understand the consequences of his words. He would finally understand that he had not just kicked out his daughter. He had kicked out his business partner. I ended the call with the bank and put my phone down. A wave of exhaustion washed over me. The adrenaline that had been keeping me going was starting to fade. I needed a place to go. A place to think. I immediately thought of Maya. She was my best friend, my rock. We had known each other since kindergarten. She would understand. I sent her a quick text. Can I come over? Something bad happened. Her reply came back almost instantly. Of course.
Doors open.
I drove to her apartment building. It was a small, cozy place on the other side of town. The drive felt unreal, like I was watching a movie of someone else's life. The familiar streets looked strange. The houses all seemed too perfect, too peaceful. I wondered what was going on behind their closed doors. Were other families falling apart tonight? When I got to Maya's, she was waiting for me at the door. She took one look at my face and my duffel bag and pulled me into a hug. I leaned into her, and for the first time since my dad had spoken those words, I felt the tears start to well up in my eyes. He kicked me out. I whispered into her shoulder. She held me tighter. Come inside, she said softly. You can tell me everything. We sat on her comfortable sofa, and I told her the whole story. I told her about Susan's little comments, the rising expenses, the fight about my mom's garden, and my dad's final, cold words. Maya listened patiently, her expression growing more and more angry as I spoke. She refilled my cup of tea twice, and just let me talk until I had nothing left to say. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. I am so sorry, Clara, she said. That is horrible. Your dad is being a complete idiot. He is, I agreed, my voice hoarse. He's so blinded by her. He can't see what she's doing. What is she doing? Maya asked, leaning forward. Do you think she's just a gold digger? I think so, I said. The spending is out of control. But it's more than that. It feels like she's trying to erase my mom. First the pictures came down, then the furniture was replaced, and now the garden. It's like she wants to pretend my mom never existed. Maya nodded slowly. And your dad is just letting her? He says he wants to move on, I said, staring into my teacup. He says I'm the one who is stuck in the past. But he's not moving on. He's letting Susan bulldoze over our entire family history. We sat in silence for another minute. Then Maya's practical side kicked in. Okay, she said, her tone shifting. So, what's your plan? You said on the phone you did something. You called the bank. I took a deep breath and explained it to her. I told her about my mom. My mom was a smart woman. She had been a financial planner. She knew my dad was good with his hands, a great carpenter, but terrible with money. He was too trusting, too generous. She had worried about what would happen if she were no longer around to manage things. So, before she got really sick, she had set up a family trust. The house, their savings, their investments, everything went into it. And she had made me a co-trustee, with equal power to my dad. I have to sign off on any major financial decisions, I explained. Selling the house, taking out a new loan, any withdrawal over a certain amount. He can't do any of it without my signature. Maya's eyes widened. Does he know that? She asked. He should, I said. We all signed the papers together with the lawyer years ago. But I think he's forgotten. Or maybe he just never thought I would actually use that power. He always just saw me as his little girl helping out with the bills. He never saw me as an equal partner. And Susan definitely doesn't know, Maya said, a slow smile spreading across her face. Not a clue, I confirmed. She just thinks I'm the annoying daughter who lives at home for free. So when you called the bank, Maya said, putting the pieces together, you told them to freeze the account. Exactly, I said. I put a freeze on all withdrawals over $500. I flagged the account for a security review. And I told them that from now on, all transactions require dual authorization, verbal from him and written confirmation from me. The bank manager was going to call him personally to inform him of the new security protocols on the trust. Maya let out a low whistle. Clara, that is brilliant. His phone is going to ring, and he's going to find out that the ATM is officially closed. A small, bitter smile touched my lips. That's the idea. I felt a pang of guilt, but I pushed it down.
He had started this.
He had thrown me out of my own home. I was just protecting my mother's legacy. And protecting myself. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. I flinched, thinking it was my dad already. But it was just a notification. I picked it up and decided to do some more digging. I still had the banking app on my phone. I could see the joint account. I opened it and started scrolling through the transaction history again. This time I was not just looking for big expenses. I was looking for patterns. What are you doing? Maya asked, peering over my shoulder. I'm looking for where the money is going, I said. Susan is clever. I bet it's not all just shopping sprees. I scrolled back, month by month. There were the usual bills, the mortgage, utilities, insurance. Those were all stable. But then there were the other charges. Credit card payments. Large ones. Payments to a card that was not mine or my dad's. I clicked on the details. The card was in Susan's name. She was using our family's joint account to pay off her personal credit card bills. And the amounts were getting bigger every month. Last month it was $3,000. The month before, $2,500. It went back 6 months, to right after she moved in. Oh, you have got to be kidding me, Maya breathed, looking at the screen. She's paying her own bills from your family account. It looks like it, I said, feeling a cold knot form in my stomach. This was worse than I thought. This was not just frivolous spending. This was systematic. She was draining them. I kept scrolling. And then I saw something else. A series of smaller transfers. $500 here, $1,000 there. They were all going to the same place. A savings account at a different bank. An account I did not recognize. The memo line for each transfer was the same. Personal savings. Whose savings account is that? Maya asked. I have no idea, I said. But I have a pretty good guess. It had to be hers. She was siphoning money from the main account and putting it into her own private stash. My dad was either completely oblivious or he was willingly letting her do it. Either way, it was a massive betrayal. He had been telling me for weeks that money was tight. He had asked me to cut back on my own personal spending. I had been packing my lunch every day and canceling my gym membership to help out. All the while, Susan was funneling thousands of dollars into her own pocket. The anger I felt was so intense it made me dizzy. My phone rang. This time, the screen lit up with my dad's name. My heart hammered against my ribs. I looked at Maya. She just nodded at me, her expression serious. "You can do this," she said. I took a shaky breath and answered the phone. "Hello," I said. His voice was a roar. "What did you do, Clara? What in the world did you do?" I switched to the present tense in my mind. He is yelling. I am calm. I hold the phone slightly away from my ear. "I'm not sure what you mean," I said, my voice deliberately level. "Don't play dumb with me," he shouted. "The bank just called. They said the account is frozen. They said they need your signature for everything." "What is this?" "It's called a trust, Dad," I said simply. "The one you and Mom and I set up years ago. Do you remember? I'm the co-trustee. I have a legal responsibility to protect the assets in that trust." There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line. I could hear Susan in the background, her voice a shrill whisper. "What is she talking about? What trust?" My dad ignored her. "You had no right to do that," he said, his voice lower now, but tight with fury. "That's my money." "It's not your money," I corrected him gently. "It's the trust's money. It's our money." And I saw the spending, Dad. I saw the credit card bills. I saw the transfers to a secret savings account. You told me we were broke, while Susan was using the account as her personal piggy bank. You lied to me. "That's none of your business," he sputtered. "Susan and I are a team. We decide our finances together." "Then you can decide how to pay the mortgage with your own money," I said. "Because the trust account is now on lockdown. The automatic payment for the mortgage is scheduled for tomorrow. Without my authorization, it won't go through. The bank will be calling you about that, too." He was quiet again. I could almost hear the gears turning in his head. He was trapped. The house, the money, everything he thought was his, was suddenly no longer under his control. "What do you want, Clara?" he asked, his voice defeated. I felt a surge of power. The tables had turned completely. An hour ago, I was the one who was homeless and helpless. Now I was the one holding all the cards. "I want you to think about what you've done," I said. "I want you to think about who you've been listening to. And I want you to look at the bank statements. Really look at them. And then you can call me back when you're ready to have a real conversation." Without her in the room, I hung up the phone. I did not wait for a reply. I set the phone down on the coffee table and looked at Maya. Her jaw was on the floor.
"Wow," she said.
Just wow. I let out a long, shuddering breath. I had done it. I had stood up to him. I had taken control. But the victory felt hollow. This was my dad. I had just declared financial war on my own father. A part of me felt terrible, but the other, stronger part of me knew I had done the right thing. My mother had trusted me. She had put these safeguards in place for a reason. And that reason was now living in her house, trying to tear down her garden and steal her family's future. I would not let that happen. The rest of the night was a blur. Maya made me eat something, a simple sandwich that tasted like cardboard. I took a shower and borrowed some of her clothes. She set up the pull-out sofa for me in her living room. I lay there for hours, staring at the ceiling, replaying the conversations in my head. My dad's angry voice. Susan's smug smile. The calm, professional voice of the woman from the bank. My own steady words on the phone. It all swirled together. I did not sleep much. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my mother's face. In my mind, she was in her garden, smiling, her hands covered in dirt. She looked proud. That was the image I held on to. The next morning, I woke up feeling groggy but determined. I had a lot to do. My first priority was to get a handle on the full extent of the financial situation. I needed more than just the online banking portal. I needed official statements. I needed to see the trust documents for myself. I remembered my mom keeping all of our important papers in a safe deposit box at the same bank. The key was in her old jewelry box, which I kept on the dresser in my bedroom. My old bedroom. I had to get back into the house. I told Maya my plan. "You can't just go back there," she said, her brow furrowed with worry. "What if they're home? What if they don't let you in?" "I'll wait until they go out," I said. Dad still works his construction job, so he leaves by 7. Susan usually goes to her yoga class around 9. That should give me a window. "It's risky, Clara," she warned. "I know," I said. "But I need those papers. They're the only proof I have if this gets ugly." She sighed. "Okay. But you're not going alone. I'm coming with you. I'll wait in the car and be your lookout." I was grateful for her offer. The thought of going back to that house alone made my stomach churn. We drove to my old neighborhood and parked down the street, just like I had done the night before. We watched the house. At 7:15, my dad's truck pulled out of the driveway. He looked tired. He did not even glance in our direction. We waited. And waited. The minutes ticked by slowly. I watched the front door, my heart pounding. What if Susan decided to skip yoga today? What if she was in there, waiting for me? Finally, at 9:30, her shiny new SUV backed out of the driveway. I watched it disappear around the corner. "Okay," I said to Maya. "That's my chance. I'm going in. If I'm not back out in 15 minutes, call the police." "Be careful," she said, her eyes wide. I nodded and got out of the car. I walked up the driveway, my steps feeling heavy and loud. I still had my house key.
I had not given it back.
My hand was shaking as I put the key in the lock. It turned smoothly. The door opened. I slipped inside and closed it quietly behind me. The house was silent. It already felt different. It smelled of Susan's perfume, a cloying floral scent that gave me a headache. The living room furniture was all new, sleek and modern and uncomfortable looking. My mother's warm, welcoming home was gone.
It was a showroom now.
A stranger's house. I did not waste any time. I went straight upstairs to my old room. The door was open. I stopped in the doorway, my breath catching in my throat. The room was half empty. My bed was stripped. My posters were gone from the walls. Boxes were stacked in the corner, filled with my books and clothes. They had already started erasing me. Chloe was probably planning to move in this weekend. A fresh wave of anger washed over me. I pushed it down and focused on my task. I went to the dresser. My mother's jewelry box was still there. I opened it. The familiar scent of her perfume, so different from Susan's, wafted up to me. Tucked in the velvet lining was the small, silver key to the safe deposit box. I grabbed it and put it in my pocket. I took one last look around the room, at the empty spaces where my life used to be. Then I turned and walked out. As I headed for the stairs, I passed my parents' bedroom. The door was ajar. I hesitated. I knew I should not. I knew I should just leave. But something pulled me toward it. I pushed the door open a little wider and peeked inside. The room was completely redone in shades of gray and white. It was cold and sterile. On Susan's bedside table, I saw a stack of papers. They were brochures. Brochures for real estate in Florida. My blood ran cold. They were planning to sell the house. They were planning to take the money and run. This was not just about redecorating. This was her endgame. She was going to convince my dad to sell my childhood home, my mother's home, and move across the country. And he was going to let her. That was all I needed to see. I hurried down the stairs and out the front door, locking it behind me. I practically ran back to Maya's car. I got in, breathless, and held up the small silver key. "I got it," I said. "And I found something else. They're planning to sell the house." Maya's face hardened. "That woman is a snake," she said. "We need to go to the bank. Right now." We drove straight to the bank. I walked up to the counter, feeling a new sense of purpose. I asked to access my safe deposit box. The bank employee led me into the vault, a place I had not been since I was a little girl with my mom. She had shown me the box once, telling me it was where we kept all our most important things. The employee used his key, and I used mine. He pulled out the long, metal box and placed it on a table in a small, private room for me. I thanked him, and he left, closing the door behind him. I opened the box. It was filled with files and envelopes. My parents' marriage certificate, my birth certificate, the deed to the house, and a thick file labeled Miller Family Trust. I pulled it out and opened it. Inside was the official, notarized document. I read through it carefully. My mom had left nothing to chance. It was all there, in black and white. I was a co-trustee. I had equal power. The trust was irrevocable. My dad could not change it or dissolve it without my consent. And then I saw the section on beneficiaries. My dad was the primary income beneficiary, meaning he could live in the house and use the money for his reasonable living expenses. But I was the primary principal beneficiary. When he passed away, or if the house was sold, the vast majority of the assets in the trust would come to me. My mom had made sure I was protected. She had made sure Susan, or any other woman who came after her, could not take everything she had worked so hard to build. Tears filled my eyes as I read my mother's careful, loving words. She had foreseen this. She had known my father's weakness, his vulnerability. She had given me the power to protect him and to protect myself. I closed the file, my resolve stronger than ever. I was not just fighting for a house anymore. I was fighting for my mother. I decided to make copies of everything. The trust document, the deed, everything. I also found the statements for the trust going back several years. I would need these to show the pattern of spending before and after Susan arrived. As I was packing everything up, my phone rang again. It was my dad. I let it go to voicemail. I was not ready to talk to him yet. I needed a plan. I needed to be strategic. The emotional, angry phone call from last night was one thing. The next conversation needed to be different. It needed to be calm, logical, and final. Maya was waiting for me in the lobby. I showed her the copies of the trust documents. "This is it," I said. "This is everything I need." "So, what's the next step?" she asked. "I need to talk to a lawyer," I said. "Just to be sure I understand all my rights and obligations. I want to do this by the book." "Good idea," she said. "Do you know anyone?" I thought for a moment. My mom used a lawyer to set up the trust. His name is on the documents. Mr. Peterson. I think I'll start with him. I called his office from the car. I explained who I was, and the receptionist put me right through to him. He was an older man with a kind, gentle voice. He remembered my mother well. "She was a very smart woman, Clara," he said. "She loved you and your father very much." I told him a little bit about what was happening. I did not go into all the dramatic details. I just told him there was a dispute with my co-trustee and I needed to understand my legal position. He told me to come to his office that afternoon. He had an opening at 3. I spent the next few hours at a coffee shop with Maya, going over the bank statements I had printed. We made a spreadsheet. We highlighted every questionable expense, every payment to Susan's credit card, every transfer to her secret savings account. The total was staggering. In just 6 months, she had spent or siphoned off over $30,000. It was a clear and deliberate pattern of exploitation. When it was time for my appointment, Maya drove me to the lawyer's office. "You got this," she said as I got out of the car. "Be strong." Mr. Peterson's office was quiet and professional. It was filled with law books and darkwood furniture. He greeted me warmly and led me into his conference room. I laid out all the documents on the big table, the trust agreement, the bank statements, the spreadsheet Maya and I had made. I told him the whole story, from the beginning. He listened patiently, nodding occasionally, his face unreadable. When I was finished, he looked over the trust document again. He read certain passages carefully. "Your mother was very thorough," he said. "This is an ironclad trust. You and your father have equal control. He cannot force you to do anything, and you cannot force him. You are partners." "So, what happens if we can't agree?" I asked. "He wants to sell the house. I don't." "Then the house isn't sold," he said simply. "The trust requires unanimity for major decisions like that. If there's a stalemate, the status quo remains. And the money? I asked. What about her spending? He looked at the spreadsheet. He frowned. This is concerning, he said. As a trustee, your father has a fiduciary duty to manage the trust's assets responsibly. These expenses. A good argument could be made that they are not reasonable living expenses. They seem excessive and for the sole benefit of his new wife, not for the maintenance of the trust or its assets. So, I was right to freeze the account? I asked. Absolutely, he said. It was a prudent step to protect the trust's capital. You were acting well within your rights and responsibilities as a co-trustee. He then explained my options. I could try to negotiate with my father. We could set up a formal budget that we both had to agree to. Or, if he refused to cooperate, I could take him to court. I could petition a judge to have him removed as a trustee for mismanaging the funds. That would be a drastic, ugly step. But it was an option. What do you want to happen, Clara? He asked me. I thought about it for a long time. What did I want? I wanted my old life back. I wanted my dad back. The dad who loved me and protected me, not the man who had looked at me with cold eyes and told me I was not welcome. But that was not possible. So, what was the next best thing? I want to protect my mother's legacy, I said, my voice thick with emotion. I want to make sure that house stays in the family. And I want Susan out of the picture. She is a parasite, and she is destroying my father. Mr. Peterson nodded. Then your course of action is clear, he said. You have the leverage. The trust gives you the power to control the finances. Your father cannot access the money without your approval. He cannot pay the mortgage. He cannot pay the bills. He cannot afford his new lifestyle with Susan. You need to use that leverage to force him to make a choice. He suggested I write a formal letter to my father, outlining my position. It should be non-emotional, state the facts, and lay out my terms. It would show that I was serious and that I had legal backing. He even offered to draft it for me. I agreed. It was the right way to handle this. It was professional. It was what my mother would have done. I left the lawyer's office feeling like a huge weight had been lifted from my shoulders. I had a plan. I had the law on my side. I was not just an angry, hurt daughter anymore. I was a co-trustee with a fiduciary duty. That evening, Mr. Peterson emailed me a draft of the letter. It was perfect. It was polite but firm. It stated the facts of the trust. It detailed the excessive spending. And it proposed a solution. A strict, monthly budget would be put in place for all household expenses. All non-essential spending would cease immediately. And I would need to be provided with receipts for all purchases over $50. The final point was the most important one. It stated that if these terms were not agreeable, my only other option would be to petition the court to dissolve the trust and force the sale of the house, with the proceeds to be distributed according to the beneficiary clause. The clause that heavily favored me. It was an ultimatum. I printed the letter. I put it in an envelope. The next morning, I drove to my old house. I did not go to the door. I just put the letter in the mailbox and raised the little red flag. The ball was in his court now. I spent the next 2 days in a state of nervous anticipation. I stayed with Maya, trying to distract myself. We watched movies. We went for long walks. But my phone was never far from my hand. I checked my email constantly. I was waiting for his response. On the third day, he called. I took a deep breath and answered. I got your letter, he said. His voice was quiet. The anger was gone. He just sounded tired. Okay, I said. And I got the notice from the bank, he continued. The mortgage payment didn't go through. They're charging a late fee. I know, I said. I can authorize the payment as soon as we come to an agreement. There was a long pause. I could hear him breathing on the other end of the line. Susan is very upset, he said. I'm sure she is, I said, my voice flat. I did not care about Susan's feelings. She says you're trying to control me, he said. She says you're trying to ruin our life together. And what do you think, Dad? I asked. Do you think I'm doing this to hurt you? Or do you think I'm doing this because you left me no other choice? Do you think Mom set up this trust to control you? Or to protect you? He did not answer. He knew the answer. He knew my mother's intentions had been good. He just did not want to admit it. I looked at the bank statements, he said, his voice barely a whisper. Like you told me to. I didn't realize how much she was spending. She told me she was using her own money for a lot of it. And the savings account? I asked. The one she was transferring money into?
Did she tell you about that?
Silence. That was my answer. He had not known. He had been a fool. A blind, trusting fool. And he was starting to realize it. What do you want me to do, Clara? He asked. It was the same question he had asked before, but this time it was different. It was not a challenge. It was a genuine plea. He was lost. I took a deep breath. This was it. The moment of truth. I had to be strong. I want you to choose, I said. You can have a life with Susan, with her spending and her secrets and her plans to sell Mom's house. But you can't have it with the trust's money. If you choose her, then we sell the house. I'll get my share and you'll get yours, and you can go to Florida and do whatever you want. But we will be done. The family legacy will be gone. I let that sink in. Then I gave him the other option. Or, I continued, you can choose your family. You can choose to honor Mom's memory. You can choose to save this house. That means Susan goes. She and her spending and her secrets, they have to go. And you and I, we figure out how to be a family again. We work together as partners to manage this trust the way Mom wants us to. You're asking me to kick her out, he said, his voice full of disbelief. I'm not asking you to do anything, I said. I'm telling you what the options are. The choice is yours. But the money is tied to the house. And the house is tied to me. You can't have one without the other. I heard a noise in the background. It was Susan. She had been listening. This is ridiculous, she shrieked. You can't let her do this to us. Tell her. Tell her to get lost. My dad did not say anything. I waited. The silence stretched on for what felt like an eternity. I could hear Susan's muffled, angry voice and my dad's low murmurs. They were arguing. Finally, he came back to the phone. I need some time to think, he said. You have 24 hours, I said. The bank is waiting for my authorization for the mortgage. If I don't give it to them by tomorrow afternoon, they will start foreclosure proceedings. The clock is ticking, Dad. I hung up the phone. My hand was shaking. I had laid down the ultimate ultimatum. I had forced him into a corner. Now, all I could do was wait and see what he would do. Would he choose the woman who had bewitched him? Or would he choose the family and the home his first wife had built for him? The next 24 hours were the longest of my life. I could not eat. I could not sleep. Maya tried to keep me distracted, but my mind kept going back to that phone call. I imagined the scenes playing out in my old house. The arguments. The tears. The accusations. I felt a strange mix of pity and disgust for my father. He had let this happen. He had allowed this woman to gain so much power over him that he was willing to throw his own daughter out on the street. But he was still my dad. And a small part of me hoped he would make the right choice. The deadline I had set was 3 o'clock in the afternoon. At 2:45, my phone rang. It was him. My heart leaped into my throat. I took a moment to compose myself, then I answered. Hello, I said. It's done, he said. His voice was hollow, devoid of all emotion. What's done? I asked, though I already knew the answer. She's gone, he said. Susan. She packed her bags. She and Chloe are gone. I closed my eyes, a wave of relief so powerful it almost made me buckle. He had chosen me. He had chosen our family. He had chosen my mother. Okay, I said softly. I looked in that savings account you told me about, he said, his voice cracking. She had almost $40,000 in there. My money. Our money. I'm sorry, Dad, I said. And I truly was. I was sorry he had been so foolish. I was sorry he had been hurt so badly. Can you fix it with the bank? He asked, his voice small. Can you pay the mortgage? Yes, I said. I'll call them right now. And Clara, he said, just before I was about to hang up. Can you come home? I paused. That was the one question I had not prepared for.
Come home.
To that house that was now empty and silent. To that man who had broken my heart. I thought about Susan's perfume and the empty space where my bed used to be. I thought about his cold eyes and his cruel words. "No, Dad," I said, my voice gentle but firm. "I can't come home. Not to live. That house. It's not my home anymore. You and Susan, you changed that." "But she's gone," he pleaded. "It can be like it was before." "No, it can't," I said. "You broke something, Dad. You broke my trust. We can work together on the finances. We can manage the trust as partners. Maybe someday, we can even fix our relationship. But I'm not moving back in. I need my own space. I need to build my own life now." He was silent for a long time. I could hear the deep, ragged sound of his breathing. "I understand," he finally said. "I guess I deserve that." "Yes," I said. "You do." After I hung up, I called the bank and authorized the mortgage payment. I set up a new budget for the household account, one that was strict and sensible. I arranged to have all the statements sent to my email address so I could monitor everything. I was in control now. I was the one managing the money just like my mom used to. A few days later, I went to the house to pick up the rest of my things. My dad was there. He looked older, smaller. The life seemed to have gone out of his eyes. He tried to help me carry my boxes, but I told him I could manage. We did not talk much. The silence between us was heavy with all the things we were not saying. As I was leaving, he stopped me at the door. "I found these when I was cleaning out her stuff," he said. He handed me a small stack of photographs. They were old pictures of my mom. Pictures Susan had taken down and hidden in a drawer. I took them from him, my fingers tracing my mother's smiling face. "Thank you," I said. "I'm sorry, Clara," he said, his eyes filling with tears. "For everything." "I know, Dad," I said. I wanted to say I forgave him, but I could not. Not yet. The wound was still too fresh. "We'll be okay," I said instead. "We'll figure it out." I found a small apartment not too far from Maya's. It was not much, but it was mine. I used my own savings, money I had been putting away for years, to pay the deposit and the first month's rent. It felt good to have a space that was truly my own, a space where I was always welcome. My dad and I started talking more. We had weekly phone calls to go over the finances. At first, they were awkward and stilted. But slowly, we started to talk about other things. He told me about his work. I told him about my new apartment. We were rebuilding, one careful conversation at a time. He never mentioned Susan again. It was like she had been a bad dream he was trying to forget. He told me he was working on my mother's garden, trying to bring it back to life. That meant more to me than any apology. One day, he asked me to come over for dinner. I was hesitant, but I agreed. When I walked into the house, it felt different again. The cold, modern furniture was gone. He had brought back my mother's old, comfortable chairs and her warm, colorful rugs from storage. The house was starting to feel like home again. It smelled like my dad's cooking, not Susan's perfume. We had a quiet dinner. It was not like it used to be. The empty chair at the table was a constant reminder of all that we had lost. But it was a start. As I was leaving that night, he handed me an envelope. "What's this?" I asked. "It's for you," he said. "It's the money from that account. Susan's account. The bank was able to get most of it back. It's trust money. You should have it." I opened the envelope. Inside was a check for a very large amount of money. "I can't take this," I said. "Yes, you can," he said. "Put it toward a down payment on a place of your own. A real place. Your mother would have wanted you to have it. She always wanted you to be secure." I looked at my dad, at his tired but sincere face. He was trying. He was really trying to make things right. I took the check. "Thank you, Dad," I said. I did not use the money for a down payment right away. I put it in my own savings account, a nest egg for my future. A future that I was now in complete control of. My relationship with my father was not perfect. It was still fragile, still healing. But we were working on it. He learned a hard lesson about trust and betrayal. And I learned a lesson about my own strength. I sometimes think about what would have happened if I had just walked away that night. If I had let them have the house, the money, everything. Susan would have bled my father dry and then left him with nothing. My mother's legacy would have been sold off to the highest bidder. But I did not walk away. I fought back. Not with anger and yelling, but with intelligence and resolve. I used the tools my mother had given me. And in the end, I saved my family. Or what was left of it. I stopped giving warnings. He finally learned what it feels like to be small. He learned that welcome was a word with terms and conditions he had forgotten he agreed to. And I learned that sometimes the hardest decisions are the ones that set you free.